What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel. Joining me as always, Callum Wiggins. On this journey back in time is Robert DeFelice.
Callum, this episode features what may be the most talked about match in SmackDown history.
It's definitely high up there. I remember, obviously, we're going to be talking about. Let's not try and shy away or anything like that. It's about Edge versus Eddie Guerrero and the no disqualification match, which would be probably the biggest talking point on this entire episode. I remember, I think that was the highest match listed when they did this huge. I don't know whether it was for SmackDown 1000 or SmackDown's 100 greatest moments or something like that. This was the highest positioned match out of the greatest moments in SmackDown history.
Well, if you assume that was done in a time where you have to take out all the Benoit matches, and at best Triple H matches and Rock matches only go about 10 minutes, you've got, this match and maybe Angle and Lesnar and the Iron Man and a few more that we'll talk about on this journey. But there's not much better than this.
No, and we'll be definitely looking forward to talking about that, obviously. I invite everyone to drop a comment below if you're enjoying this series or you enjoy this episode in particular, you have anything you want to share, any memories from this particular episode. You can, if you're not watching this through YouTube, then you can leave a rating on any of the podcast feeds that you listen to this on instead. There's a playlist on YouTube. If you're starting the journey here at episode 14 and want to go back to episode 1, listen all the way through, then check out the playlist there. And there is a link in the description to this episode of SmackDown if you have not checked it out already. So that's the early plugs out of the way. So let's get down to it. So episode 14 of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast relating to the September 26, 2002 episode of SmackDown. But first, we always start with a little bit of news when it's available, obviously. The big news, obviously, sad times. Wrestling is obviously a hotbed for sad news stories. This was in relation to the death of Rocco Rock, or Ted Petty, as he was actually known.
Oh, he died pretty soon after the ECW stuff, huh?
Yeah, he didn't last too much longer beyond that. He did a few independence shows in the New Jersey area. In fact, he passed away of a heart attack while traveling from one show in New Jersey to another show in Philadelphia. So he was double booked on the same day that he actually died. So, but yeah,
that's the life of a wrestler in a really sad nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't actually have the age he was, but I know he was I don't think he'd reached 50 by this point.
No.
But yeah, obviously best known as being half of the tag team Public Enemy. They had their best run in ECW, 4-time ECW tag team champions. They basically did the table gimmick before the Dudleys took the table gimmick to another level in WWE.
They have an underrated run in WCW, because I know everybody knows them from ECW, but their WCW run, they were pushed prominently, featured heavily, great matches with Nasty Boys and Harlem Heat, and I'm really surprised to hear that he didn't get to see too much action in the 2000s, because I think Public Enemy would have been a huge part of that ECW revival boom that we would get to in 2005.
Oh yeah, he probably would have been if obviously he'd lived that long. Which is obviously the most upsetting thing about it. This is an era where wrestlers were dying significantly younger.
Oh yeah, but whatever anybody wants to say about wrestling now, in the mid 2000s, you could just be like, "Oh man, did you hear?" And it was literally, "Oh God, who died now?" So thank God we're not there anymore, and I'm sure this won't be the only death we discuss in this journey, unfortunately.
Yeah, and obviously for people who didn't watch Public Enemy or Rocco Rock in ECW or WCW, they might know him from the WWF run, which was let's say very disappointing.
no, but if you don't know him from WCW or ECW, you don't know him, because that WWF run.
You might know him from that squash match that they had against the APA.
Yeah, from the stories told of how the APA beat the shit out of them.
Yeah, so yeah, but like you say, this was a more challenging time for people in terms of life expectancy. So it's these sort of stories that we might bring up. This might not be the only sad death story that we're going to be bringing up on this journey, which is a little bit depressing, but it's the way it goes.
It was literally what wrestling was for a while, which is unfortunate.
So, in other news, WrestleMania 19 was announced to be taking place in Seattle, Washington, at the Safeco Fields Stadium.
Yeah, this is well before the days of, hey, it's WrestleMania. Hey, start booking your tickets for next year because we're going to tell you right now that it's in this city.
Yeah, there's a lot more booking in advance now. It's a lot more. I don't want to say it's even more sought after, but there is a huge bidding war for WrestleManias nowadays. But they do tend to just stick, at the moment at the very least, to about four or five different areas, and then just pivot around. So it's New Orleans, it's New York, it's it's Los Angeles, California, around about that area, or it's somewhere in Florida, and that's
which
about
is
it.
terrible because that's like to say Chicago's got great stadiums and is a great city. I mean, it might not be the greatest city to visit in the month of March, but like it's got great.
It does have like a lot of cities do have like Philadelphia. You've got loads of different places that you could go, but essentially it's a 5-state system of New York, New York or New Jersey, depending on what you actually want to classify it as.
I'll tell you right now, I don't think Tony would disagree with me. It's New Jersey. It's not New York. That's like I don't get that. I'm sure as when you're talking to Americans, it's just like, oh yeah, England. So that's like a skip and a hop away from you. When it's like, they think that just because you're in the UK, everything is right there.
Yeah,
but it's not.
No, absolutely. So yeah, it's New Jersey. It's California, Florida, Texas. That's about it, really.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for them to give one to you guys. I'm surprised they haven't run.
They'll never do a WrestleMania here again. They'll never do a WrestleMania. Maybe another SummerSlam just for nostalgia's sake, but I'd be surprised they ever do a WrestleMania here.
That's a shame.
So let's talk about the world of what Raw and SmackDown was up to. So obviously we'll talk about SmackDown in more detail because that's what we're here for. But we have to talk a little bit about what Raw was up to as well. Starting with the rating situation, again, SmackDown wins the ratings, as they will do for a considerable period of time going forward. So the 26th September episode of SmackDown received a 4.08 rating, while Raw from the September 23rd edition scored a 3.6. So better than last week for Raw, but still...
What was Raw headlined by?
Raw was headlined by a match between Triple H and Ric Flair facing RVD and Bubba Ray Dudley.
Wow.
So, and this match didn't actually... it already sounds pretty weak, but it gets worse in terms of how the actual match was laid out. So the match itself was just like your standard tag team match. I think Ric Flair and Triple H win by some sort of DQ thing, but then the post-match stuff happens. And post-match, Bubba Ray Dudley is supposed to powerbomb Triple H through a table, which essentially it's Bubba Ray Dudley. Of course, he's going to powerbomb someone through a table, but he messed it up because he suffered some kind of leg injury while attempting to do that. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't have enough power and force in the powerbomb to put Triple H through it.
Do you think that right then and there is the end of Bubba Ray's potential singles run?
Well, Bubba Ray next week will get an opportunity at the World Heavyweight Championship, but maybe this was the thing that basically told him, yeah, you're going to have that match because we already kind of booked it in advance, but you're not gonna win it, and we're getting D-Von back over here as soon as possible.
That's probably right when they went, okay, we'll get D-Von back. That's really interesting to me because Triple H, in his attempt to relive Ric Flair's 1985, maybe was looking at Bubba as like a Dusty, in terms of the stature and stuff like that. And who knows if he'd been able to powerbomb him, how much they would have done with that.
Well, RVD at the very least was quick to think on his feet, and he improvised doing a dive through Triple H in the table to make up for the fact that Bubba didn't get the job done. So RVD quick on his feet, saving the segment at the very least.
Good for Van Dam.
But there was
Randy Orton's also now on Raw.
Yes.
With that episode, is he not? Yeah.
Yeah, so Randy Orton moved to Monday Night Raw just out of the blue, even though they announced in this episode that the brand splits, well, the brand trading and everyone just being able to jump ship to whatever brand they want ends, supposedly on this episode of Raw, which is complete and utter bollocks because Batista ends up moving to Raw after this. Big Show ends up moving to SmackDown later on after this, but they have to, I guess, plans change, quote unquote, air quotes, all that stuff, all that other bullshit.
Well, maybe the way that I see it is they were gonna have to come up with unique reasons, because the whole idea of somebody can jump out of bitterness may be done, but I don't know. Very much depends.
Well, Randy Orton did make his debut on Raw, and he defeated Steven Richards, so he's still being positioned as a babyface at this point in time. That would change very soon. There was a title change on this episode of Raw, which is involving another person who just came over from SmackDown, as Kane and the debuting Hurricane defeated Christian and Lance Storm for the Tag Team Championships.
Who thought this was a good idea?
Vince saw two guys with masks and thought that'd be funny to have. Oh, it's the little guy with the mask that uses a choke slam, and the big guy with the mask that uses the champs.
I'm just glad that this is before the era of, hey, it's Team Hurricane. Get it? Did you get it?
It was a short-lived tag team that had a bit of charm to it and was a bit fun, but didn't really what doesn't leave much of an impact in the long-term things. So
I think my issue with it is everything they did with Kane prior to unmasking just falls flat.
Yep, that's about it. But so that was like the main thing on Raw. The other big story that was going on Raw, I say story, but a lot of time was devoted to essentially a building up matches and segments revolving around Bischoff, Rico, 3-minute warning, and Booker T and Goldust. So essentially just, okay, we're going to have a match between 3-minute warning against Booker T and Goldust, and we're going to have a load of segments building up to it.
Okay, and, Rico will never be a babyface.
Nope, absolutely. Well, he's straight, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So he's good.
As if you listen to Unforgiven one.
They did make it a point on the pay-per-view to note that he was straight.
Okay, so that's what Raw was up to. So let's move on to the show that we really want to be talking about, which is SmackDown, September 26, 2002, from the San Diego Sports Arena in San Diego, California. There we go. Just I like stadium names that don't leave any ambiguity to where they actually are.
I do miss that. I think the modern era of it's the Dunkin' Donuts Arena and it's the Pepsi Center. I am not a fan.
So the show kicks off with a recap, not of the WWE Championship match and the controversy surrounding the finish and the fact that it was a draw and who is Undertaker still fighting for the title, who's the new number one contender. No, it's all built around Stephanie and Rikishi's big ass.
Well, priorities, Callum.
Yep, that's the real major story on SmackDown, that Stephanie got one over on Eric Bischoff.
I can understand wanting to, as the general manager, I'm going to air this thing at the beginning of my show to say that I'm better than Eric Bischoff, but this can't end fast enough.
Well, we kick off with that big ass in the ring itself because it's Rikishi versus Chavo Guerrero. So last week, Chavo Guerrero cost Rikishi their tag team match by hitting me in the face with a camera. So
right.
Builds up towards just this match taking place, singles match. It's kind of an odd one because with Rikishi versus Chavo Guerrero, it can only end one way. But they do give Chavo a bit in this match. He actually lasts a lot longer than I thought he would do.
Do they give him more of offense or more of Rikishi's ass?
I mean, there's a lot of Rikishi's ass in this one, but Chavo does, he manages to get his legs up to block splashes in the corner. He goes after the legs of Rikishi. He sends Rikishi's shoulder first into the ring post at one point. And Chavo then at one point decides, hey, it's not just Rikishi's ass that's on show tonight. Why don't I put my ass on show as well? And he tries to deliver one of the tiniest stink faces that have ever been attempted. But Rikishi pushed him away, and then he launches into his big comeback. So, and then you just see the size difference is just all over the place. So Rikishi nails him with a choke slam. He tries the banzai drop. Chavo gets the knees up. He then goes for the camera. And it's really I really appreciate it. I know WWE nowadays gets a lot of stick for its camera work, and very rightly so. Yeah, there's about 1 million camera cuts in every single segment. But this was a really nice angle of Chavo wrestling the camera out of the cameraman's hands, where you're actually seeing the view of the cameraman that he's taking it off of. Just like, give me your camera. It's just like, that was a lot of fun.
When do you think that they institute the million camera cuts? Because it wasn't, there was always more camera cuts than normal wrestling, but it wasn't as obnoxious as it is now, where every 30 seconds.
I think it came with the move to HD. I don't know what the connection is to that, but I think there must be some reason why they had to, they moved to HD, and maybe that made them reconsider all of their camera work and stuff like that, and maybe they thought of new ideas, and that's how it was instituted, but I can't say with any real certainty.
Wow. But good match. The Guerreros are still good in the ring.
Excellent,
and they're equally good at comedy, and sometimes I think that hurts them. But, they will always have a spot on the show.
Absolutely, and Rikishi eventually hits the Banzai drop and gets the victory, as would be expected. So yeah, it was a good match considering like the dimensions of the two guys wrestling. And post-match, Rikishi does his dancing for the crowd, gets that little pop as well. Rikishi is a constant source of entertainment. So that's really the takeaway from this.
I wish he would have gotten a chance to be WWE champion.
I would have at least enjoyed him fighting for it. I don't know whether he could actually be WWE champion, but I don't think he would have been. Let's face it, there've been a lot worse WWE champions than Rikishi.
Oh yeah, I think nowadays the standard is completely different than it was back then.
So we cut backstage where Tori is rubbing herself with lotion before a bikini contest with Nidia.
Because of course.
We get a graphic highlighting the fact that tonight will be the no disqualification match between Edge and Eddie Guerrero. And then we move to the ring where Taz is standing by waiting for the bikini contest to take place. So he's going to be comparing this bikini contest.
Let me just say, Taz, I know nowadays there's like a popular movement of short kings and, shorter people embracing that. Taz, well, I'm sure it gave him a Napoleon complex and maybe ECW. Doesn't seem like it ever bothered him, but it was only on display for me because I just realized, Tori's taller than Taz.
Yeah, he's pretty sure. But he's joined by two guys that are much taller than him in terms of Billy and Chuck, who'll be the judges for tonight's show, just to reinforce the fact that they're super straight guys that like to see women's bodies.
Yeah. That makes them baby faces, Callum.
Absolutely. So Tori comes out, then Nidia comes out. She touches up both Billy and Chuck to try and curry their favour before she gets in the ring. Cole makes fun of her sneakers because she's white trash. That's the story. That's the character. Nidia is white trash, and she essentially goes about proving that by once the bikini contest starts, she goes first. She reveals a pretty plain black bikini, and then she just starts doing what I guess can be described as dancing.
Yeah, I don't know what the point of that is.
So they've done this before. Nidia is obviously a big prime example of this. They did this with Victoria later on as well, in the fact that because she's meant to be like a bit of a weird, goofy heel, she can't have any sort of sex appeal. So So if we put her in a bikini contest, she has to dance so unerotically that we don't actually get any of that enjoyment out of it.
I would understand that if we're working with Molly, but Nidia's entire run here has been, look at how sexual she is and how loose she is. So this just seemed out of left field.
She just has a very different perspective on what is sexy.
I guess so.
So she starts dancing goofily. She drops her gum at one point, picks it back up, puts it in her mouth because, again, white trash. Yeah. And then Chuck holds up a 6 as his score, and then Billy lifts up a 9 because lol, 69.
Did you know they're not gay?
And then Tori does her thing. She shows off a more revealing pink bikini, and then she dances with a lot more composure than Nidia did. Both Billy and Chuck, unsurprisingly, give Tori 10s. And so Tori wins the bikini contest. Nidia storms off while Billy and Chuck celebrate with Tori. And before Nidia can get to the back, just interrupted by Jamie Noble and Tajiri coming out. They come out to defend Nidia's honor. He says that nobody screws his girlfriend, at least in this way, and then challenges Billy and Chuck to a tag team match, which happens straight away.
Sorry, so the fact that they're wrestling in street clothes, does that make them baby faces? Because I don't understand why they're just having a match in street clothes.
It makes the people that they're facing when Billy and Chuck eventually win seem like jabronis. The fact that they're just fighting in jeans and a t-shirt.
That's okay. They're cruiserweights. We can beat them.
Yeah. So they're wrestling in t-shirt and jeans. Doesn't stop them getting invited over the cruiserweights. Tori, for some reason, for the first about 3 to 5 minutes, is just standing on the apron. And I have no idea why she's standing on the apron, because it doesn't lead to anything. She doesn't interfere in the match in any way or cause a real distraction at that point. She just, for some reason, decides, I'm not going to go sit on ringside. I'm just going to stand in the corner until Jamie Noble comes over to her and just points at her to get off the the apron.
Maybe she thought it was a 6-person tag?
Yeah, she's going to wrestle in a bikini. That sounds like a recipe for success in my mind.
Oh, in the minds of WWE Creative in 2002, absolutely.
I do believe that in early 2003 Velocity, there is a bikini match between Nidia and Tori Wilson. So
now on WWE Network, early Velocity. I don't know if that particular episode is, but I know they've started adding Velocity episodes.
So the match is pretty good. It's a pretty good tag team match. As Billy and Chuck are good. Jamie Noble and Tajiri are really great in the ring, so they did a good job selling for the bigger guys. They eventually take over. They target the leg of Billy Gunn. Billy sells for a long time. Noble at one point implies a Indian deathlock, so he's clearly trying to curry favour from the Raw side of backstage. Billy eventually escapes with a face plant. He gets the pump. The crowd really actually pumped for the hot tag, rather than when you compare it to how absolutely lukewarm and dead they were for the match against Jamal and Rosie. They're actually really into Billy and Chuck in this show.
Well, remember now, there is crowd sweetening.
That is true, but the crowd did seem like, at least from a visual side, looked to be a bit more animated. Well, definitely more animated than they were at Unforgiven.
I think the argument I would make there is it's the beginning of the show. So far, they've seen a stink face and a bikini contest, so they're definitely up.
You just don't want to give Billy and Chuck any credit, do you?
I think they're a good team, but I think that they're getting a better response here because the stuff preceding them here was better than the garbage preceding them on Sunday.
I guess that's fair. I'm just trying to be nice to them. Maybe
I think they're great. I actually, going back and watching this, I think Chuck Palumbo was a lot better than I gave him credit for initially.
Yeah, so Chuck does make the hot tag. He launches Noble across the ring with a double underhook belly-to-belly throw, super kicks Tajiri, then gets him up on his shoulders, and decides to ask Billy, who's had the entire match have his leg worked over, to climb up to the top right, which he does I give credit to Billy for selling climbing up there, but it means that he's climbing for a good, 30 seconds up to the top rope, and that means Tajiri has to sit on Chuck Palumbo's shoulders for 30 seconds and not manage to get off it by that point.
Yeah.
But Billy does fly off. He hits the code red. Billy and Chuck win the match. Babyface get another victory. Nidia, post-match, spits her gum towards Tori. They start brawling in the ring. Billy holds Nidia against the ropes, and Tori then spanks her to end this segment. So it flowed from one segment to the other. The match itself was pretty good. So
it ain't the end of Tori tonight, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's still more to come. But first we move on to SmackDown's #1 announcer, Funaki, who knocks on Brock Lesnar's door and then is terrified when Brock Lesnar actually answers the door, because I assume he was expecting it to be Paul Heyman. But then he sees Brock Lesnar just answer the door and he's absolutely petrified, to the point where he can't even really ask a question or even say his catchphrase.
Well, he's the #1 announcer, and at least he knows when he's overmatched.
So Lesnar playfully tussles his hair and tells him to go ahead with his question. He's being very big brothery towards Funaki. And so Funaki asks Lesnar directly if he's going to give The Undertaker a rematch. Lesnar for 1 second makes it seem like he doesn't understand what Funaki's saying, but he then says that he did hear him, and he's actually pleased with Funaki because he's the only man with the guts to ask him that question to his face. And Lesnar then says he's going to answer it in the ring. And Funaki gets really excited because he thinks he's gotten this big exclusive that he's going to hear from the champion. And then he heads off, and Lesnar goes back to his locker room and is going to prepare to deliver one hell of a beating in the next couple of minutes.
Well,
yeah, this was good.
That was great. I think Funaki, for whatever reason, they decided no cruiserweight for you. We'll give you announcer role, and it's funny. Somebody probably thought it was a kick to have him be the #1 announcer because stereotypes. I don't know.
But Lesnar showed a lot more of a I don't know how to describe it really. It was more subtle than a lot of his promo work recently.
Oh, Lesnar is about to start finding his groove. The thing about Lesnar in this run is it will make you say, how did he come back in 2012 and not understand what a microphone was? Because Lesnar in this run is actually very personable.
I make the argument that WWE promos and UFC promos are very, very different things. And even though there's a lot of influence from pro wrestling in the UFC promos, there is also the fact that Lesnar can basically say whatever he wanted in UFC, and now he was constrained by writers in WWE, and that didn't translate well.
That sucks.
That's at least my logic, in the sense that I know Lesnar's he's probably one of the guys that can have a bit of creative freedom, but maybe there's the fact that whether he needs to be more constrained or whether he doesn't want to be more constrained, and when he is, that makes him demotivated, and so he delivers bad stuff. Either way, clearly he needed Paul Heyman back when 2012 came around. But at this point in time, he's doing pretty well, promo-wise.
Yeah, and I think he was actually enjoying being I know this term is cringy, but I think he was enjoying being a sports entertainer. And it wasn't until he realized just how much travel there would be that he decided, yeah, same for me.
So we cut to Stephanie in her office when Kurt Angle comes in to gloat about what she did to Bischoff on Sunday. So he's just kissing her ass, essentially, constantly. And Angle says that he comes in basically straight out with what he wanted. And what he wants is a rematch with Benoit after Benoit cheated at Unforgiven. And Stephanie says it's a good idea, but she has something a little different in mind for the main event. And before she can say what the main event will be, in comes Rey Mysterio. Angle makes a joke about child labour laws because Mysterio's small and he keeps harping on about that fact.
Yeah, and he just does it. He does it so well. It's like he doesn't understand that nobody's listening to him. Everybody wants him to shut up.
Yeah, he thinks that everyone is in on that joke and everyone really loves that joke, but it's like nobody some people would find it funny, but nobody hates Mysterio because of it, and everyone hates Angle because of it. So, Stephanie announces that it's going to be a triple threat in the main event. So it's Angle versus Benoit versus Mysterio. Angle then jokes about Mysterio being born in San Diego 8 years ago because he's 8.
His child labor laws.
And Angle says that he plans on getting the 1-2-3, but Mysterio then replies that he's going to be nailing the 619 instead.
I'm a big fan of the match that we're going to get out of this, and it's going to be a good time.
Okay, so we move on to more in the ring stuff, but it's still not match works. So out comes Funaki with a dented steel chair, and when he came out with that steel chair, I was just thinking, I know he's already going to be beaten up by Brock Lesnar, but now I kind of feel like he deserves to be beaten up by Brock Lesnar. Because why would you bring in the steel chair, which Funaki then happily presents to Brock Lesnar when him and Heyman get to the ring, saying that this is the chair that Undertaker dented over your skull at Unforgiven a couple of days ago.
You know what? That is a level of detail that I dare say would never be brought up today. So I give them a lot of credit for that. I guess Funaki does deserve to get beaten up after handing that to Lesnar, but I like the detail.
So Lesnar doesn't answer Funaki's question. Instead, he just corners Funaki. Funaki then starts fighting back against Lesnar, just nailing him with a couple of punches. They have no effect. Lesnar then just tosses him around like a dog tosses around his favourite chew toy. Destroys him, spears him into the corner multiple times, throws him around with belly to belly, and then hits the F5. pretty straightforward. It's what Lesnar does, just eats people alive.
Heyman on this show reminded me a lot of the Heyman in 2012 with CM Punk. Like, he's just hyping Brock Lesnar as, you're the best, you're the man. It's not the subtle, like, Brock Lesnar killer voice that we would get. He's still very overly animated for Brock Lesnar at this point.
So once again, we cut backstage, and Tori Wilson is just backstage and catering or whatever, and Dawn Marie arrives backhandedly, congratulates Tori for beating the hillbilly Nydia in a bikini contest earlier. And then Dawn says that Tori should challenge herself with someone who has a lot more to offer, like Dawn herself. And then Tori just leaves. And it's a very innocuous segment unless you know what's about to happen. And
so I know what's coming.
This is, oh my god, this is gonna just dominate every show from now until the start of 2003.
Which it dominates quite a lot in 2003 as well. I don't know. On the one hand, just taking it at face value without knowing, it's like, wait, are we gonna have like a bikini contest championship or something? You should challenge yourself with somebody who's got more to offer, but of course she's trying to sleep with her. And spoilers, she wants to sleep with Tori. She's gonna get there through nefarious means.
Yeah, I mean, I have to ask about, because obviously Tori Wilson is like the big face of like the women's side on SmackDown, and she's a Hall of Famer. And it's just a case of the idea that essentially the next year for her is built around two pseudo lesbian stories. Which is essentially, so it's basically lesbian story, Playboy cover shoot, lesbian story. Let's move on.
That's right, because Sable made out with her too or something, didn't she? Like...
Yes, yeah. So it's this Tori, Al Wilson, Dawn Marie, this weird geriatric husband.
Somebody was watching porn. Oh, hold on a minute. We're gonna have to talk about this more in detail. But whoever thought that this was good was getting their inspiration from porn. Like, that is it.
Well, I don't want to spoil too much because this discussion is going to be rage on and on and on. And we're now so close to talking about Edge and Eddie Guerrero that I kind of want to cut it there and just save it for the weeks and weeks we're going to be talking about this going forward.
But you do make a good point in that this is pseudo lesbian angle, the Sable thing, and then, by the way, Nydia that she was just in the ring with, she's going to have an implied foursome on an episode of SmackDown with Nydia in July of 2003. So we won't talk about it, but it exists.
Okay, so let's draw a line under that. Let's go into some wrestling. Edge versus Eddie Guerrero in a no disqualification match. This match fucking rules. It's one of the greatest matches in SmackDown history. I don't really know how much more I can really add to it. We'll obviously go into detail in some of the spots in this match. Rob, take this away.
I remember where I was, what I was doing when I watched this. For some reason, I watched this match by myself. I think my brother had some friends over, wasn't watching wrestling that much at the time, and I felt like I was in on a secret that nobody else knew because I had just watched this banger match. This fucking match is so good that upon rewatching it for this podcast, it upset me that there's so many fucking people in the audience audibly chanting boring. Because I guess you're fucking mad that wrestlers are wrestling. They didn't, much like a modern crowd, they didn't pop until somebody brought out the ladder. But that's what, everything about this match was good, Callum. The slow build to the weapons. They get the ladder, they knock out the ref, and then they go back to wrestling. Because it's still a wrestling match. And yes, there's the nasty, nasty spot of Eddie Guerrero taking a back body drop into the corner where the ladder is that I don't know how, that doesn't just immediately cripple you. There's the unfortunate spot where Eddie uppercuts Edge, and Edge hits the ladder, effectively leading to the neck issues that would plague Edge for the rest of his career. But my God, this match is everything wrestling should be. It built, it had stakes, it ends with a top rope or off ladder execution. This is one of the greatest TV matches of all time, bar none.
Yeah, you're going to get no argument from me there. It was so I wanted to go a little bit more into the nuance of this match itself. So first of all, Eddie's tights. Get started with the important stuff. Eddie's tights were so shiny.
Yes.
It's the shiniest pair of tights I might have ever seen.
You know what? And this probably wasn't all that planned out, but I like that Edge was wearing blue. Sorry. Eddie was wearing red, and yeah, I just like that. They're totally different, right down to the color of gear that they're wearing.
So the match itself is obviously a large part of it is a huge amount of wrestling. You mentioned the people that audibly tried boring. I was more concerned with the woman at the start of this match, which is just screaming at the top of her lungs
Oh
at
my fuck.
anything that Ed
The
was
fucking
doing.
banshee.
It was ridiculous, and like it spoiled my first like enjoyment of the match. And then she finally piped down.
They
It was
had
just
to have
so,
kicked her out or something.
yeah, I hope so. But
She
yeah,
was like, really? It must have been, I want Edge. Like, because at the time, Eddie was very much a heel, getting booed from everybody. But wow, that woman was out of control.
yeah, so we had like a superplex by Eddie pretty early on in this match. Edge pulls out the ladder. Eddie ducks his charge. Edge nails the referee. Mike Sparks just takes like a ladder straight to the face, and that was pretty brutal. Good on him for taking that spot. So steel chair to the back of Edge. Eddie misses a frog splash. The action returns from commercial, and Mike Chioda is now the referee. So
Yep.
so he's now taken over from Sparks, who's just been laid out. Then just more and more awesome stuff happens. Hurricane Rana from the top rope by Eddie. Edge blocks another Hurricane Rana with a power bomb, and Eddie looks like he lands right in the back of his head and neck. That was a pretty ugly looking power bomb. Eddie drop kicks the ladder into the face of Edge. He pulls out the second ladder, and then he does the helo spot where Edge is sandwiched between two ladders.
Amazing.
Which, yeah, that got a huge reaction from the crowd. Eddie's chants just started blaring out at that point. They climb up the ladder. Eddie delivers an absolutely picture perfect sunset flip powerbomb. Like that
Not
was
in the match, but worth it.
yeah, that was awesome. Edge then, as Rob mentioned earlier, backdrops Eddie into the ladder, leaning in the corner, and Eddie just crumples up. It's just
Yeah.
the
Ow.
sixth spot. And then the match culminates with Edge and Eddie standing up on a mixture of both the ladder and the top rope. Edge dives off with a leaping execution to Eddie. It's a really like awkward landing, but it still looks like very gnarly. Edge gets the victory. Yep, awesome match. No complaints here. Just it was brutal, but it kind of needed to be just to add make something different out of this match. It couldn't have just been another singles match between these two.
And this is one of the only matches I can think of that's just built around a ladder. Like, you don't see a lot of no DQ matches that are built around a ladder as the main weapon. It's very unique. There's nothing like it since, I would really say. Like, the matches nowadays are heavily inspired by, but this is still grounded in wrestling enough that this is so good. And then at the end of it, in a very Paul Heyman way, he lets Eddie get, his curtain call and his chance for having such a great match.
Yeah, so Eddie's left busted open. After Edge leaves his celebration, he gets his pop. They pause for a second. The crowd start like getting up to applaud Eddie Guerrero. There's a big, like, pretty big standing ovation, and they play his music. They give him the chance to just being celebrated as well. So Eddie's not turning straight babyface off the back of this, but there's a clear change in how the fans appreciate him in terms of his in-ring work.
Yeah, and I'm still mad that it took weaponized violence for the people to appreciate it at all. Because at the beginning, like I said, there were audible boring chants, and it like filled me with so much fury.
Well, this is still an Attitude Era crowd, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we have a commercial for No Mercy, which features kids dressed up with different wrestlers for Halloween and being turned away at Pete Rose's house until Kane shows up and gets Pete up for a chokeslam.
I love that.
It's a good segment, yeah.
One of the best celebrity uses ever is the use of Pete Rose.
So we have Mark Lloyd interviewing Chris Benoit backstage, asking him about the triple threat match. Benoit starts with "You suck" before explaining that's what people chant at Angle, but as a wrestler, nothing is further from the truth. So Benoit is doing what you should do as a professional wrestler. You're bigging up your opponent, because then when you beat that opponent, it makes you look even better.
Yeah, imagine that.
And then when you lose that opponent, of course
It
you lost
doesn't
to
make
him
you
because
look
he's a great
bad.
wrestler. Yeah, that's like,
Yeah.
you should never put someone that far down. He talks up Angle's accomplishments before saying he's looking forward to beating Angle again tonight. He then says Mysterio was born in San Diego, but Benoit was born to hurt. Saying with the same level of intensity, he's basically saying everything, which is obviously in hindsight incredibly creepy.
Yeah, like I like that Benoit is given a lot of time to talk because clearly this is, Heyman showing that he believes in Benoit, but the amount of stuff that happens, where he's just saying these things, it's very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
So we cut backstage again, and it's Matt Hardy showing Shannon Moore footage of his match with the Hurricane last week, with Hardy saying that loss was so humiliating it caused him to run away to Raw, which is a good way of looking at it. Moore says that the Undertaker's loss to Hardy recently had more to do with Lesnar than Hardy. Hardy tells Moore to keep watching as he beats the Undertaker tonight without Brock Lesnar's help. Then Hardy then walks down the corridor as Lesnar walks into the shop behind him. So there's going to be a bit of involvement from him. We have footage. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, everything they're doing with Hardy, I like. I'm surprised that, spoilers, when it comes down to it, the only thing they do with him in this run is Cruiserweight Champion.
So we move on to the footage from, as we spoke about earlier, the WrestleMania 19 announcement from the for it to take place in Safeco Field in Seattle. So you have a number of wrestlers being at a press conference just talking about how great WWE is and how great WrestleMania is going to be. Pretty standard.
Not much to say there.
Yeah, they just do it. They do that every single year, so it's no different from any other time.
Only thing I can think of is the only difference is they never went back.
So we move on to Undertaker versus Matt Hardy. So Hardy initially offers to shake hands, and Taker accepts, but then he doesn't let go of the handshake. So he uses the fact that he's got arm control over Hardy to just beat him up in the corner. Hardy then manages to get some sort of offense in. He gets his feet up, chop blocks the Undertaker, hits a leg drop. Then he goes for the twist of fate. Taker blocks it, hits a choke slam, hits the last ride, and it's over. So it was a match. It was actually a fairly even match that was contained within 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think this was a perfect use of time.
So immediately after the bell, Lesnar dives in with a belt shot to Taker. The fact that how quickly this was done is making me feel like they were rushing for time and they'd lost a bit of time. But Lesnar's just immediately in. He hits Taker with the championship belt. Taker is busted wide open. He looks pretty badly busted open. Lesnar nails him with the belt again. Lesnar and Heyman skulk away as Taker just crawls around covered in his own blood. Looks really, really gory. Like his face is just completely red.
I know we talk a lot about Ric Flair and Triple H, but Undertaker is of that same vein. He likes to really just cut his head open.
You know what it is? He's got a huge forehead.
Yeah.
And that's probably just, it gives more room to just cut it open, I guess. And
I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the intensity. Their match on Sunday sucked.
Yeah.
It cannot be overstated. But I know that they're headed towards a good match, so I'm okay with it. Not okay with the build to the match, but more on that in the coming weeks.
So during the break, they show footage of Taker being checked over by trainers. He tries to get free and just go out of it, but he's too weak because of the blood loss, and so he collapses to the floor in the trainer's room. So it's clear that I guess they're trying to restore Lesnar after maybe the match was too weighted towards Undertaker. Now Lesnar looks like the dominant force in their feud.
Makes sense, and like I said, I thought it was a great use of time. And it shows that not every major angle needs to be, dragged out to 30 minutes.
So we move on to the main event, which is Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit versus Rey Mysterio in a triple threat match. So
on the same show, Callum, on the same card as Edge and Eddie Guerrero in an ODQ match, we get these three absolute machines
Hmm.
in the main event.
Yeah, it was a good night to be a wrestling fan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So Angle cuts his typical pre-match promo, saying he's confused why this match is even happening. Says that Mysterio claims to be from San Diego because he doesn't speak English, supposedly, and says there's nothing to be proud of. Says that the INS, which is now the USCIS, which is essentially like tax and immigration, would beg to differ about him being from San Diego because obviously he clearly crossed the border as a child or something.
Uh, Boy, we're just okay with doing that. I mean, like it works, and it works because it's Angle, and Angle does his job very well.
Yeah, he emphasizes that Mysterio will need 911 tonight, not 619, and says that Mysterio's Benoit's cheating from the previous night or from Unforgiven, should I say, is similar to half the audience having snuck in from Mexico. So now he's
Oh,
just bringing the whole audience in. It's very JBL
still not
vibes from
as bad.
2005, 2004, 2005, really.
Yeah, still not as bad as the JBL literally kicking people over the border that we would see a year and a half later. But this is pretty bad.
So the action kicks off with Angle and Benoit squaring up to each other and Mysterio essentially just trying to get involved. Angle immediately shoves Mysterio and cheap shots Benoit, but Mysterio responds with flying head scissors. And I don't really want to go into too much detail about all the moves in this one because there's just move after move after move. But essentially, it's three of the top wrestlers in the company at this point in time just going balls at the wall because they have about 15 minutes to work in, and so they're just trying to get all their shit in as quickly as they possibly can.
I would argue that these are three of the top wrestlers of all time in a match where they like everything about this is great and it tells a simple story. Like it's a match that I wouldn't expect to be the main event because there's no stakes, there's no real anything here, but it just worked.
So the good thing about the dynamic is the idea that when Angle and Benoit work in Mysterio, it's a big guy versus, even though they're not super much bigger than Mysterio, but it's a big guy versus the little guy. The little guy's using his speed and quickness to try and get an advantage over these two. The other two are just powering him around the ring. And then when it's Angle and Benoit, it's their technical mat wrestling, and all of that just blends together really well. It means you can tell almost three different matches in this triple threat, and it still just blends together and works. It's not like singles match, singles match, singles match. They are all working together, and it's coming together in a very good, harmonious mix.
And that's how triple threat matches should be, I think.
Yeah, so Angle at one point tries to pin Benoit with his feet on the ropes to try and obviously copy the fact that Benoit did that, but the referee, I think Benoit actually kicked out of this one rather than the referee noticing it. Mysterio's speed and high flying, as I mentioned, is like a really good addition to this dynamic. Angle flies into the ring post while chasing Mysterio on the outside, but then Mysterio's backdropped by Benoit. Uh, Benoit takes control of Mysterio for a while. Mysterio tries to fight out, but he just lifts Mysterio up and dumps him over the top. That was the. I shouldn't like gloss over that part. Benoit at one point gorilla presses Mysterio up and throws him out of the ring.
Yeah. Flapjack position just like treats him like I don't want to say like a child because it's weird, but yeah, just treats him like a child and throws him right out the ring.
And then it's German suplex after Angle slam by Benoit and Angle with each other. Mysterio dropkicks Angle the ring, pins Benoit, and he gets two after the Angle slam. There's a moonsault German suplex to Angle because Angle loves that spot.
He does.
Angle lifts Mysterio over the top rope onto Benoit with a senton. It looks a little mistimed. Essentially, it's like Mysterio just diving over the top rope, doing that thing because Angle was lifting him up. It looks a little mistimed, but they still managed to pull it off without anyone getting hurt, which is the best thing.
Yeah, Ray is still in his peak here.
Yeah. Ankle lock to Benoit, who escapes to the ropes. Both men find themselves hit then by 619 as they're fighting in the around the middle rope. Angle blocks the West Coast pop, but then he gets hit by Sunset Flip for two. So they're doing like a load of near falls for Rey Mysterio, which makes you think that, okay, Mysterio's going to get a lot of near falls, but he's just going to come up short in his hometown. But then eventually you have essentially Angle gets in the crossface. Angle manages to roll away. Benoit doesn't release the hold. Mysterio dives in with a springboard leg drop. That gets a long, long 2 count on Benoit. So you're really starting to think, okay, they're not going to give it to Mysterio here. Then
Yeah.
Benoit backdrops Angle over the top rope. Mysterio springs off the second rope, Hurricane Rana's Benoit, and gets the shock 3 count. Great finish to a great
First
match.
of all, everything Mysterio does here is as smooth as pro wrestling will ever be. He does not trip. Everybody catches him as best they can. This match was almost as good as the Edge and Eddie Guerrero match. I might even say, like, in terms of SmackDown matches, top 10. Because this is a fantastic wrestling match.
So I heard, but I read in the newsletter that this match was heavily edited. But that is the advantage of having a tape show. You can edit all the best bits and cuts bits out that didn't go as smoothly as you would have expected them to. So, but again, I don't really care too much about that side of things. If you have that capacity, then use it and produce something that's really, really good.
Listen, the pilot of ECW was quickly editing all the best bits together, and he has a much better team to work with here. So I expect nothing but greatness all the time. And this is like one of 5 matches with this group of people that are going to come up here and just be the best things. We're going to have a whole tag team tournament built around these guys, and it's going to be great. The wrestling quality now is why I agreed to do this show in the first place, because like this is SmackDown 2002 at its best.
Yep, so this was a very fun show, 2 excellent matches, like essentially at the top of each hour, just really building in the entire thing into a lot better than the sum of its parts. There was very little GM involvement. There was a lot of like just other little segments involved in it. There was a lot of backstage stuff, which was a little bit over the top, but other than that, the wrestling of the 2, especially the 2 matches that we wax lyrical about on this show, that really takes it over the edge to be a really good to great show.
I mean, nothing overstays its welcome here. There's no like Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff involvement. Everything here is just good, and it's going to get better and better and better.
Well, what's actually going to happen is that next week we're going to be seeing how it gets better and better, because next week sees the start of the WWE Tag Team Championship Tournament.
See, I didn't lie to you. Better and better.
Yep, so there's going to be a lot of discussion about that. We're going to see the first 2 tournament matches. We also have a Cruiserweight Championship match between Jamie Noble and Crash Holly. So that'll be interesting. We have 2 other matches involving the SmackDown 6 crew, Kurt Angle versus Edge. And
always a good time.
And the main event of Rey Mysterio versus Chris Benoit 1-on-1. And we also...
Go ahead.
And we also have the highly anticipated bikini contest between Tori Wilson and Dawn Marie.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing they'll do.
And also, if that's not enough, we also have another match between The Undertaker and Matt Hardy. Falls Count Anywhere.
And a big thing happens in this match that's going to play a huge role in the build to No Mercy.
So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to next week as well. So hopefully you enjoy that and you'll join us for that as well. So nothing much else to do other than just to hit you with a few plugs. So as we mentioned, or at least alluded to earlier, if you are part of the Patreon, if you're at the $10 tier or above, you can check out the Unforgiven 2002 review that we did that went out earlier this week, where we just review Unforgiven 2002, all of the SmackDown and Raw matches that took place on that show. So if you're not signed up for the Patreon at that tier, then go ahead and do it. But even if you could only just spare $1 or any amount of money, it all just helps to keep the lights on and make sure we can produce more and more content for you guys. There are other ways that you can obviously help us with the Redbubble and TeePublic shops. So there are other ways, like pick up some merchandise to help support us in that way. Obviously on YouTube, there's the applause function and all the other ways that you can support us, become a member on YouTube as well. Just other ways that you can just give us your money.
Absolutely.
That's essentially
because, I mean, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and hey, that's how you show your support, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, but you don't obviously have to support us monetarily. You can also support us by checking out all the articles on smarkoutmoment.com, liking and sharing our stuff, liking this video, sharing this video with your friends and family. Check out Smark Out Moment on Facebook and Twitter and all the other great places. Join the Mega Maniacs, our Facebook group, for discussions with like-minded wrestling fans. You can find out all the latest happenings in the Fantasy League and all the other stuff that we talk about there. Join us for like pay-per-view nights where people were talking about how shitty Retribution is and why Slapjack's the worst name in wrestling history.
And let me tell you, I think that even in 2002, with all this silly stuff that was going on, they at least had better names than Slapjack and Mace.
So obviously Tony's not here, but if you want to show him a bit more support on the side of things, then Fanboys Anonymous is where to go to for all your geek culture content. Anything you want to hear about movies, TV shows, video games, all of that great stuff, then head over to Fanboys Anonymous. And yeah, that's about it until I just get to my individual plugs. But Rob, I'll let you do yours first.
Yeah, I do have some plugs. WrestleZone.com, Fightful.com are the two websites that I work for. You can check me out on Twitter at DeFelice. Continue supporting everything we've got going on from the YouTube channel. Check out the past episodes of this podcast. Check out the archives of our recent Intercontinental Championship discussion, which is one of my favorite discussions of all time, genuinely. And come back around tomorrow because we've got your Clash of Champions review.
Yep, so much stuff for you guys to get your earbuds around. Obviously, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. But yeah, that's about it for us here. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode 14 of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, and we'll be back with episode 15 next week. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.